position right now across the crypto space that leaves us with more questions than answers. Our patterns that have pulled us back since November into earlier this year don't look quite complete. So we may be at a bottom, we may be closing in on a bottom, we may be ready to bounce. It's not totally clear, but I'm going to attempt to bring some light to the situation. So if you'd like to follow along, please check out my description. I'll have a link posted to my charts within that. In our last update, we covered three major patterns in Bitcoin Cash, which just gives you an idea of how much ambiguity there is at the moment. We had our red pattern as primary, and this is almost the same pattern you see in Bitcoin and Ethereum, in which our entire crash thus far would be the red wave one, with the wave two bounce coming, and then the actual final crash to come later on. The problem is that we've come down so far that it doesn't look like this is really just a first wave. It's almost a little too deep to be a first wave. So that's why my primary pattern became purple, which has us going a bit lower sooner, which we'll look at on the big picture chart in just a second. There's another alternate pattern that we are actually done completely with our whole corrective structure, which is believable because of the nature of what this correction looks like. This could be interpreted as a five-wave down, or might look like an ending diagonal. Again, will look more clear on the big picture. But in the short term, we're kind of in a sideways consolidation. We're very range bound, and we're seeing similar movements across many asset classes, including the S&P 500 and other things. I'm actually looking for some maybe a small bounce before a bigger, deeper crash in those, and that perspective carries on to cryptos, especially with Bitcoin Cash that we're looking at. So in our big picture pattern, this is the logarithmic chart, 4-hour view. This is the one that you'll have a link to below. But we had our peak in May of 2021, three-wave pattern down. I'm calling that the A wave. What looks like a corrective pattern up could be an A, B, and a C wave. That's our bigger B wave up in both green and red. And then so far, this entire structure does look like an ending diagonal in that we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subwaves, and they fall between the trend channel lines. And we have overlap of the fourth wave beyond where the first wave fell. So these are all the characteristics, classic characteristics of a diagonal. Is this a leading diagonal or an ending diagonal? Won't know right away. And therefore, it is entirely possible that this is a leading diagonal for a first wave, but it's gone so deep, I have doubts about that. This is a much lower low than what we had in the summer. We bottomed around 380 during the summer, and we've gone as low as 262, just about. So clearly, this whole thing is part of one big correction. The question is, how are we going to basically proceed from here? So if I go with this A wave down here and this being a B wave up, typically your C wave will be a 1.0 extension of this A and B. That's what this fib tool here is demonstrating. And the one-to-one point for the C wave would put us at about 186. So that is a strong bottoming target for our correction. So this green pattern here really has us either completing where we have already dropped to, or maybe 186. So I wouldn't say it's my primary yet. There's a very good chance that this is the primary pattern. So if I really had to break this down, I know purple is the primary just because of the force with which we came down, but really it just has a narrow, maybe a 5–10% edge in probability, in my personal opinion, over the green pattern. So again, the green pattern says that we're very close to being done. We have actually broken down below the 0.764 extension of this thing, which tells me that we are very likely going to go all the way down to the first, or the 1.0 extension. And when I say it broke down, it just barely peaked below it. So it stopped, it bumped its head. In this case, it hit a floor basically before that floor collapses. I would fully expect this to get to 186 with that green wave C pattern that we're seeing here, the fourth wave. Purple pattern would come into action. It would become primary relatively soon, I think, if we break convincingly down through the 219 mark. So I think I actually elaborate right here. If we break 219, it doesn't mean we can't spike down to 186, but if we really fall through it, there's a good chance that we may be in purple. So it may depend on the speed of it, or we may see a quick reversal. There's some ambiguity there. So I may very well change my opinion. Green may become my primary sooner rather than later. We're going to see how the other cryptos behave. The red pattern I'm seeing is a much lesser probability right now. I'd probably put that 10–15% probability, just purely based on my opinion. And that would call for us having a big wave two bounce and then a much deeper crash later. I don't see that being very likely because of how far down we've already come. We've already come down so deep that we've already broken our 61.8% retrace mark. And let's say we do go down to 186, that would be a very deep retrace. There's a strong Fibonacci support right around 252. That would mark the 76.4% retrace of this entire rally from what I was calling third wave. So like I said, there's some confluence there. Breaking down below 219 would be a strong indication that we're going purple. If we do drop that deep that quickly, the red will more or less invalidate. That would be too far to be the red pattern. And what to expect next would be either we see a bit more of a bounce before we finish this pullback, or maybe we go down directly. So therefore, this is the time to start thinking about your buying plans. I know it's been all doom and gloom. How much lower are we going to crash? What's going to happen? Remember, as bearish as I have been in the short and near term, I'm still very much a bull long term. There's no reason why our Bitcoin and Ethereum patterns are broken. And the same goes for most of these cryptos. This is probably a good correction for those especially. We've, of course, dropped a little bit deeper in Bitcoin Cash and some of the altcoins like Ethereum Classic and EOS, but these are following more of a diagonal pattern in the big picture. I think I talked about this about a month ago on my analysis, but based on the bottom that we hit in December of 2018, this looks like a diagonal structure. And again, diagonals are also five-wave patterns, just like the standard impulse pattern, but they retrace much more deeply and they don't have clean impulsive subwaves. So this looks like a zigzag up, zigzag down. God knows what this is. This is like a freaking boomerang thing. It's even more readily apparent in EOS and some of the other altcoins. And we're clearly in a big three-wave correction down. So I'm actually going to lower this channel trend line a bit to better reflect the low that we've hit so far. So maybe it's an expanding diagonal, whatever it is. Typically, diagonals project a little bit lower than an impulse would, but you never know based on what we're seeing. There's a good chance we still make it to over 3,000 at some point. But until we see a reversal, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. For us to basically sound off the buying alert alarm, we need to see a five-wave impulsive pattern from where we are. So we need to see a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clearly up, and then a three-wave correction down, a higher low for UTA people out there. If I see that, it is time to buy your pants up. So remember, keep your eyes on the prize. The world is not ending just yet, and that applies to the stock market too. I fully expect to see a lower low in cryptos and stocks, but we're much closer to the bottom than we were at the top. So remember, don't forget to subscribe so that you can get my alerts on when to buy, how to buy, and then how I believe we should all diversify our crypto holdings. And don't forget to give me a like if you enjoyed my content. Till next time, thank you for watching and happy trading.